creative editor of Depth of Field magazine, and I'd like to welcome you to the Hip Hop and Comics Cultures Combining. Now, for as long as I can remember, I've loved these two cultures and all of the different forms of art and all the diversity that they represent. They're uniquely American innovations. They're different forms that, you know, they really encompass all sorts of things. They have long, convoluted histories. The history of comic books starts way before comic books, Big Little Books, and comic strips, and some say cave paintings. The history of hip-hop begins with funk and with soul and with jazz and with rhythm and with graffiti and with a million other things. All of these cultures, these two cultures combine all of those elements into something that is uniquely new and uniquely identifiable, even if it's not always easily definable. And yeah, they deal with combining elements. It's words and pictures and beats and rhymes and DJing and breakdancing and spray painting and kung fu moves and practically everything in the world gets fed into comic books and hip hop. They're hybrid cultures. They're cultures of inclusion. And so today in that inclusive spirit, I assembled a group of people that come from all angles and mix these elements in their own ways in their work, coming from different directions, meeting somewhere in the middle. Now, before I go on, in assembling the panel, the primary difficulty that I encounter when doing hip-hop and comics panels is to accurately represent the diversity of these forms on stage. I ended up, as I seem to inevitably do, with a primarily male group because I'm drawing from two worlds where women are underrepresented and neglected. So I think that as we go forward, we all need to acknowledge that. It's important to reflect the entire spectrum of humanity that are encompassed in hip-hop and comics, and that are often excluded from these panels and events, and work to be more inclusive. Now that that's out of the way, I'm going to introduce the panelists. All the way on that end. Co-creator of the Public Enemy comic book, illustrator extraordinaire with numerous comics and books and album covers to his credit, and an acclaimed independent MC in his own right. This man defines a lot of what this panel is about. This is Adam Illis Valenza. Next, former head of an indie record label, comic book self-publisher, and co-creator with some people you might have heard of named Adrian Young, RZA and Ghostface. Co-creator of Black Mask Studios' 12 Reasons to Die comic series, Matthew Rosenberg. Our next guest, the administrator and managing director, is that the correct job title?
Oh, whatever you like.
Okay. Administrator and managing director of Bulk Records, manager of Deltron 3030, and one of the minds behind other projects including Pillow Fight and too many things to mention, Tony Isabella. Our next panelist has remixed and done production work for innumerable bands. Eels, Blues Explosion, Primal Scream, Air, Depeche Mode, Shop, Stereo Lab, I'm going to forget about 50 of them. And he produced the first Gorillaz album. He's redefined the sound of pop music constantly with projects like Lovage, Pillow Fight, Handsome Boy Modeling School, Dr. Octon, and of course, Deltron 3030, Danny Ogden.
Please spell my name. Right over here.
One of the most respected individual MCs in hip-hop history, the voice of Deltron 3030, part of the world-famous Hieroglyphics Collective, creator of many of my personal favorite hip-hop records that make even me, as a rather introspective person, dance, and acclaimed MC Supreme, lifelong comic book fan, Del Funky. Yeah. Graphic novelist and comic creator, a world-renowned DJ and producer, Renaissance man, and of course, member of Deltron 3030, Kid Koala. When people here that I'm organizing a hip-hop panel at a comic convention. This is always the first person they ask me about, and now after ages and connections, he's finally on stage with us. Lifelong hip-hop junkie, illustrator supreme, comic creator, all-around mind-blowing visual stylist, Jim Moffat. And last but certainly not least, co-creator of Rhyme Travelers, an all-ages science fiction hip-hop comic book. He also contributes to that magazine. He first became known in my life for his incredible hip-hop and superhero mashup illustrations, Kenny Keel. So let's just start off, since we're already running behind, by launching right into it. I'm going to just throw a loose ball, and whoever wants to grab it first, go for it. Hip-hop and comic books. What ties these things together in your mind, and what made you work in this field combining these things?
Are you looking at me?
I am looking down one. I am looking into
I'll say right away, as a kid, I was just a kid who always sat in his room with the door closed and blasted music and drew. So coming up in the 80s and that, like discovering Run DMC and Beastie Boys, cassette tapes, like that was my soundtrack for drawing always. And then the music and the attitude of the hip hop influenced the actual visual look of my work, the lines, the graffiti, and then, up to current time, like there's dudes right here on the stage whose records I've listened to like hundreds of, if not thousands of times while I still work. So thank you guys for making those records.
I do love that shit. Same thing. Because I can draw too, so a lot of times I'll be drawing for hours now. Listen to whatever, listen to the hip hop name. I just decided to go the rhyme route because it was quicker to come up with a finished line. I can still draw though.
It's that independent spirit too. If you want to make a comic, you can just do it. If you want to make a song, you can do it. And no matter what people say, they tell you that you can't do it, you can. And that's the spirit of hip hop and comic books, that independent, rebellious attitude.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I remember that growing up. You know what I mean? Like all kind of underground comic books. But I've seen that go from nobody know about it, big
Black tie, right?
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like a big magazine.
Yeah.
To everywhere.
And they said those independent comics were going to do anything, and they're still here.
Right.
Just like hip hop, they said it wasn't going to be around, and it's still here.
I think for me it was like stories. Everything you said rings true for me too. The attitude, the style, comics are visual. Really, hip hop was visual. By the time I was coming up, it was a pretty fully formed culture. But I think what really connected with me and what I tied them together is like the narrative. There's a story. Biggie will bring you into this world. It'll be like a movie. He'll take on multiple characters and do a dialogue scene. And then it's all him. And I guess comics, like the independent spirit, it can be just one dude in a room taking on several characters. And it might not be a verse, it might just be the way you lay out a page. Will Eisner, not really hip hop, but the way he could show like a crime scene, and he would show it like through the eye sockets of the criminal. You can see his eyelashes, and you can see his perspective, and it's like watching a rap song play out, So I guess that's where I connected. Yeah. No voice for you.
That's maybe this should be some sort of machine.
Alright, let's.
My earliest visuals in music, goes all the way back to when I was a kid, just the 7-inch storybook records. It's just this escapist thing. Yeah. So I read a long record. My parents got them for me because they thought, it fostered interest in reading, but instead it fostered interest in scratching. Really, again, back to the stories, back to just being able to escape into something.
You know what I used to like about comics, especially something like the X-Men, I could relate to the characters, you know what I mean? Like, especially the X-Men, I could really relate to how some of the characters felt, like a Nightcrawler, Wolverine. I could get into them. Where some other comics, they might not go that deep as far as the character, as far as their profile or whatever. So certain comics like X-Men, I really was into. You know what I mean? Even like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they would go into each turtle personality. You know? That's what I used to like about comic books. I felt like I could relate to those characters.
The X-Men were definitely hip hop. The government hated them. They were always wanted. They were always trying to duck people. No one liked them, but they were still trying to do good for people. They were trying to help people. Just like hip hop artists, especially in the 80s and early 90s when people had a positive message, and nobody listened to it. No one wanted to pay attention to that. The 90s, and you had like a lot of the hardcore comic books, and everything's in that same. It got darker, and people wanted that negative vibe.
But why do you think that is?
Oh, that is a whole.
I got my own.
That's the whole thing in myself.
I couldn't entirely tell how
said
comics and hip hop shifted in the mid '90s.
No, I never really figured it out. The X-Men, that makes more sense. Like, you were obviously a Cyclops fan, so you wanted to blow it up and do the three-eye vision,
Actually, Wolverine was like my thing, and Nightcrawler. Even Kitty Pryde, too. I used to love Kitty Pryde, too. Shooting things through walls.
What was your Ninja Turtle?
Raphael. He would blow his top all the time. He always rough somebody up.
So then for the comic creators here, so those two and these ones and how do you incorporate like hip hop culture into your work? How do you do it without making it a terrible, forced, artificial oh, check it out, you got Spider-Man breakdance, now he has chains. How do you do that naturally? Because the reason that I want you guys here is because you're doing the work that I love. This is a panel that I put together because this is a topic I want to hear about. And these are the books that I love, and I keep on seeing common threads in all of them. They're all of Jim's stuff is recognizably hip hop, even though a fraction of it actually involves music.
Right.
All of Adam's work is recognizably hip hop. Matthew, 12 Reasons to Die is a great example. This is a horror comic that's set, it's set in two different time periods, neither one of which is anywhere approaching graffiti and subways, and it's, how do you take that and make it work?
That's actually something we sort of talked about a lot, me and Riza and Ghost, when we were working on the book, because we wanted to make something that feels hip-hop. To Riza, that's super important, that everything he does feels hip-hop and comes from hip-hop. But he doesn't want to pander, he doesn't want to make shit obvious, and he doesn't want to, have things that feel like, a McDonald's commercial for hip-hop fans. Yeah. And he talked a lot about his movie, with Iron Fist to me, and he said, it's a hip-hop film, but there's no hip-hop in it. It takes place in, hundreds of years ago. And that was sort of the battle for me and the struggle in trying to figure out what that is. And I think to a lot of people, if they're not into hip-hop, the book doesn't feel hip-hop to them. They don't get that.
Really?
I think so. It's a crime book that's in the 60s, and this actually goes back to the earlier question, which is one of the parallels that I love between hip hop and comics is the underground elements of it. And for me, it's like crate digging, looking for records, looking for vinyl, knowing that when I was growing up, you would go to Tower Records and HMV, but you weren't getting real hip hop records, you weren't getting 12 inches. And comic books, you can go to a newsstand and buy, whatever, but the good stuff is in the weird comic shop, in the back of the shop. And so I made one of the protagonists in the book. He's a record collector, he's a crate digger, and that's what he's doing. He's hired to find these records. And it's a nod to hip hop culture, but it's also a nod to what I think ties them together in a lot of ways. There's something. There's obviously hip hop in movies and on TV and whatever, and you can go to the theater and see the X-Men and see Avengers and Batman, but a lot of the good stuff is underground, and these are cultures that have vibrant undergrounds that always will and always need to. And so I wanted to tie that together in my book, and I think that is a key theme in a lot of the hip hop stuff that I like, is that it embraces and celebrates the underground roots of it.
Yeah, you touched on something that really tied a lot of hip hop concepts in my mind, which is you know, being a kid, digging through crates of records and long boxes of comic books to find that one thing that I wanted. Like, I needed that beat to make this DJ set work. I needed this comic so I could have the entire story. There's sort of a historical mentality to both forms, and that I've always really appreciated. And an appreciation, again, for like taking all of these elements and putting them together. Like a long story made up of a bunch of issues. A DJ set or an album that is made up of like all of these tracks, which don't sound the same, but together they create this sort of unified whole.
Part of it, I mean, we've talked about this before, is the people who do it. I mean, Jim clearly loves the art form, the culture. It comes through in his work. You know, same thing with all these guys. It's, you know, if you have someone who's not part of the culture, or not part, you know, doesn't really love it, that's when it's going to come out like Captain Crunch rapping. You know, but you know, it doesn't have to be gold chains and radios and you know to be hip hop. It doesn't have to be, absolutely. But if you have the spirit there, if you're passionate for it and you love it, then it's going to come through in your work. You know. So
then possibly a tougher question, or at least one that's not as clear to me because I don't work in this forum to the same extent. The musicians, Dell, how do you incorporate the sort of style and ideology of comics in your work? Because I mean, there's lyrical references, but it seems to go a lot deeper than that. And for for Dan and Kid, well, I mean, how do you bring that sensibility into a form where you are largely dealing with the instrumentals and the like textural elements of things?
You know what? I was kind of like a rock fan before hip hop, so like a lot of stuff kind of already was done. You know what I'm saying? Kind of already laid the groundwork. I feel. So I just feel like you can just have basically you can have a hip hop soundtrack go to whatever you want it to go to. That's just the soundtrack. You know what I mean? So if you wanted something that's a little bit more gritty or a little bit more street, so to speak, or urban, so to speak, like it's in the city, something happening like that, it seemed like kind of natural you would have some kind of hip hop go along with it. You know what I mean? Or something more dark, or like we was talking about underground. It seemed like hip hop would fit with that. It just seems like it's kind of like got that feel to it, as opposed to jumping through tulips or something like that. There's all kind of music, you know what I mean? But hip hop kind of fits that, so that's how I look at it. Sometimes I'll watch Transformers, the cartoon, the first Transformers, the cartoon, the real one. You know what I'm saying? With the Matrix, the real Matrix. You know what I mean? Sometimes I'll watch that with the sound off and I'll make beats to it and see like if it matches, So, or I'll read a comic. Sometimes I'll just read a comic and then imagine. Or sometimes I'll have a screenshot of a comic or something on my desktop, and while I'm making the beats on my desktop, it kind of just helps me contour what I'm making. You know what I mean? I don't know. I use my imagination when I'm doing stuff. I don't know about every other hip hop artist.
That's the same thing though. He clearly loves comics.
Yeah.
Even if he makes comic book references, anyone can make comic book references in a rap song. But he loves the comics, and that shows through his rhymes and his songs.
Comics was first, actually. Before I even started rapping, I was a comic book writer.
Dan, do you have anything on that?
But the relationship between comics and music, I just think like, especially in hip hop, you get as opposed to say pop music where you're making a song about like I love you, I love you, I love you, or like whatever. Like when you do hip hop, a lot of times you get to a point where you're like narrating the scene or narrating part of life. It's like selling drugs in Queens or something like that. Or like with the Deltron stuff, for example. We're traveling 1,000 years in the future. It's more viable to do it in relationship to comic, in relationship to what is, because hip hop, not necessarily because it has to be fantasy, but because it's a portrayal of something. Visually speaking, you get a better grip on what's going on when you get to see the combination of the graphic with the lyric, and like for us in particular, it's like we've used and worked with a lot of great artists and stuff because it is something that's in the mind's eye, not in reality. So it's much, it expresses itself much better through graphic kind of representation, copper representation, than through like I don't know, like gritty live street view or whatever.
first time I saw you spin, it was a pretty mind-blowing experience for someone who was an aspiring DJ, because I was listening to Tribe Called Quest and Mr. Doggelina and a million other tracks mixed together with samples from the Spider-Man records that I grew up listening to, and like, you know, the wonderful samples and all of the like the weird cartoons and sound effects and things. And you carry that through really well in your recording, but not just in your live.
I mean, for me, it was always a platform. The one role in the turntable scene when I was introduced to it when I was 12 was, I guess at its core, kind of a hip hop rule, or at least I can't speak for all that. Definitely in the turntable scene, is just do something fresh, you know. If you're gonna get up on stage during that battle, whatever you've made happen in the next 5 minutes that you're up there, you know, do something that hadn't been heard yet, you know, at least that night. But I mean, my motivation for getting into that and drawing actually was because I thought when I was a kid, I practiced drawing a lot. I was a shy kid, but I could make these really good Valentine's cards. And the girls would be like, "Oh, did you get one of Eric's Valentine's cards?" And the kid was thinking, I was like, "Oh wow, you know, you can get attention from girls." DJing was the same thing. I think I look young now. Like when I was 12, I looked like I was 7. And so, you know, if I start DJing, I'll get invited to the, you know, the older girls' birthday parties and DJ those, and so it's, you know, it's all very, well, I guess procreation was the main. It kind of backfired because now it's like 90% dudes at the shows, but we did find mom story during the days.
And by the way, for all the kids out there aspiring DJs or artists, definitely go the DJ route if you're trying to get ass. DJ will always get more ass than like the visual artists. For future reference.
Booty music as well, actually.
It's funny though, because you'll find yourself DJing, you know, on New Year's Eve. And you're like, oh, this year me, you know, getting, you know, a nice amount of money to play on New Year's Eve, and then you do the countdown, and everyone's coupled off and kissing each other, and you're stuck behind like $2,000 of equipment. You're like, oh, fail. But what I like about like turntables and comic books, at least for me personally, is that you can take it to this kind of surreal world. You know, you can take a sound like a trumpet or a human voice, and then start stuttering and bending it backwards and twisting it out of what's possible in reality with a human voice or one of those instruments. That's what's cool about scratching to me. In the comic book world, I also like that you can bend what was acceptable or real. You know, it's like, oh yeah, there's that house and there's a propeller on it and it flew away. No problem, it's a comic book, we get it. You know what I mean? Like, people suspended disbelief for a while. It's a fun place to work for sure.
Yeah, that's the same thing for me. Actually, you hit it right there. Surreal. I love that. I mean, with Ultramagnetic MCs, they was like really the crew that made me be like, okay, I can do this. Because before then, you had to fit a certain vein of hip hop. You had to do it a certain way. You know what I mean? And then when Ultramagnetic came, I was like, wow, like this is like something else. You know what I mean? This is for me. You know what I mean? Same thing with like Cheech Lizard and Von Godet. You know what I mean? Even though I wasn't supposed to be reading comics, but yeah, I was. You know what I mean? Like he was a big influence on me as far as visually. You know, because he would just be drawing this blood out stuff. You know, but it was incredible.
He was a huge influence on a lot of the New Yorker costumes as well. A lot of classic graffiti pulled Cheech Wizard and everyday characters. A lot of the artists that I know, the whole like Basquiat character, who actually created the first rap comic and Keith Haring financed it in 1986.
Yeah, I mean the Bodhi line style, that thick, smooth line around all the characters, like definitely helped dictate what characters became in graffiti art. Like if you couldn't do that real smooth, thick line style, that was kind of like graffiti 101, you know?
Yeah, bizarrely oversized elements of characters, like beyond traditional comic characters. A lot of that underground comics influence was really was there at the first birth of like that incredibly artistic graffiti explosion.
Yeah.
So this actually, something that Eric said, just transitions me into something else. That for actually the whole middle section there, and anyone else who wants to jump but Dan, Tony, Eric, Del, all of you work in, I mean, Eric, all of your records, or most of your records have an actual comic attached to them or a comic element. But you also all specialize in doing like weirdly conceptual projects that incorporate a lot of comic culture, not necessarily superhero, but science fiction and animation and just really reflecting in music a lot of the culture that you see here when you walk around the show. It's not just a show about comics, it's just a show about giant robots and transformers and toys and animated characters and people in strange furry outfits and all sorts of things. And so why is it that why do these conceptual projects keep on being the ones that you take on? And how do you go about determining that entire identity so it's not just a collection of songs, it's a project about a thing, Deltron, the science fiction concept opera that now has a sequel that I can't wait to hear, that we're all eagerly waiting. The first Gorillaz album that Danny produced, Del famously rapped on, and scratched on, and like all of these projects, they all have some sort of theme and concept on it. How do you go about doing that each and every time? Why does it always seem to work neatly in this amazing pop culture spectrum?
I think the question really is the reverse. It's like, why don't other records do that? The key thing is, like, you make music, you make it, it's obviously more art form than other things, but like, the reason I make records that have themes and concepts is because they have themes and concepts. What I mean by that is like, I'm a record fan, I buy a lot of records. And I don't know, about 10 years ago, I was like, whoa, this Beyonce record is super hot. Like the first solo, it's all crazy, love's amazing. And then you listen to this album, it's garbage. There's like one incredible song, maybe the second one that's decent, but like there's no continuity, there's no thing kind of holding together. It's a series of like different producers, different ideas, different everything. And I was doing something before that, but I'm saying like, I'm using that as an example because that's why you don't see so much of that, because you see like, oh, let's find the hits, let's find the 3 hottest producers on the planet, let's find this song, this song, this song. So this is right. And for me personally, it's the reverse. It's like, well, I'm a consumer. If someone's gonna like what I do, I'm gonna make sure every song is great. I'm not saying you have to like every song I do, I'm not saying anything like that. Well, the idea is, right. The idea is to make a cohesive work. So if you're into it, you're falling into the world. I think because I'm a consumer, I owe it to you because I would like that when I buy a record as well. To listen to it and be able to go like, wow, I can really get into this vibe. I hate songs 3, 5, and 7, but overall this work is just something where I can listen to it from front to back. So it's in the same way. It's like you don't want to like dismiss the other senses. Yeah, we'll make music, but like there's a sensual aspect, there's a visual aspect, there's a mental visual aspect, or whatever. And I want to make sure I tie it all together. And part of the way you do that is creating a world for a record. I'm not saying like you have to create a fantasy world for everything we're doing, but like it just helps bring along a project, brings along an idea where you can get into like the mood of it. Like we're taking your life away for 45 minutes or 50 minutes. I want you to go over there and see where we're coming from. And partially the graphics create an environment where people can like take it for what it's worth and what it is and go with it and come along. And like most of my records have concept, but when you have that concept, people can get into it, which is why we work with like great artists like James Hewlett or David Cho or Alex Barney or whatever, because they have great vision. Yeah, and their great vision allows them to interpret and take what we're doing and continue along with it and the plot, the story, and everything's like, as opposed to being a one-faceted attack, it's like several, 3 or 4, and like, if I could make smell and food or whatever be in there, I would do that too, you know what I mean? And we're working on that, you know?
Fans fragrance line.
Exactly. Eric's working on a little more food line, you know what I mean? And I'm not joking.
You should just call it Dan.
So Tony, how do you go about determining like which artists to use in this? Do you base the concept around the artist that you choose? Do you come up with concepts since you are one of the people behind all of these projects?
Okay, well, I have a really not sexy job, and basically Dan will come to me and say, all right, we know we're doing the new Deltron record, and you know, after he's got together with Dylan Koala, that he's like, we want to use Alex Party to do the artwork for it. So then it's more or less my job to, you know, get Alex Party to agree. He's somebody who's super busy. We can't really afford him, even though he's a fan of the project. But it's like, how do you know? Really, my job is to get him to agree to do it. And we start out. He's like, I'm super busy. I can maybe do a new logo. And I'm like, and so we end up starting with from the new logo. Now we have, you know, double fold out vinyl, crazy 12-page everything, because I have to like, you know, inch it along to get everything we need and, you know, make sure that, you know, he's working with our layout guy properly, everything gets delivered to the manufacturer on time. So, you know, it's really kind of just hearing what the guys want and making a relationship with the illustrator or the artist and, you know, putting all the nuts, you know, it's a more nuts and bolts job. But it's, you know, working with Joe was totally great. Alex Party's fantastic. But they're super busy. So it's just, you know, it's just a lot of detail work of making sure that every part gets done and the artist comes away happy that he worked with you on some level. Being able to make a deal with them that they can live with, because like I say, if you were a man on the street trying to hire him, it would, you know, the cost is prohibitive. So it's like, how do I make a deal that he can be happy with, and how do we get all the parts we need? So it's just, you know, like I say, hearing what the guys are asking for and trying to deliver the package that they want. And then, you know, the other part of it is starting with, well, the first Eltron record, obviously, I think because it is so futuristic and
Still a decade later.
yeah, well, you know, with the first project, they were very clear. They didn't really want it to be photo-driven. It was meant to be art-driven. So there's no trying to work, you know, on the publicity and marketing angle when all the press is asking for photos and whatever. It's just, you know, it's its own set of challenges to work with. You know, illustration and futuristic art. But, you know, the packaging always ends up amazing. It definitely suits the project, so it's its own reward, you know.
So Kenny and Jim, like that. You guys are both pretty unique stylists in terms of what you guys have done with hip-hop culture. While Jim presented my intro was the first person I get asked about, the next thing I always get asked is, did you see those superhero hip-hop mashups? And if you don't know what we're talking about, actually, Kenny did a series of pictures that ended up on, I guess on Flickr and then getting blogged everywhere really quickly. On OKPlayer, it didn't blow up on the comic sites, it blew up on the music sites. And it's a bunch of classic rap album covers matched up with your favorite famous superheroes. So you get the NWA, which I guess stands for Nordic with Attitude. Straight out of Asgard. You get Lil Lorok, which still might be one of the funniest things I've ever seen. You get, where is my personal all-time favorite? There is a Dark Side. Which is flat out, it blew my mind. It blew a lot of music people's minds because it hit through the music news scene. And all of a sudden they're like, oh man, we remember these comics. We know all those characters. And so you guys are the two people that like inevitably are, nobody ever asks me if I'm bringing in musicians for some reason because they don't think they'll ever see them in comic. Everybody always asks if I've seen Benny Keel's work. So like, how did you guys sort of determine your identity in like doing this? You both sort of were known as hip-hop comic creators, and the two comic creators that people automatically associate as hip-hop comic creators.
That's great. Okay, so for me, it was really by accident. I've loved hip-hop and comics since I was like 4 years old, but I could never figure out how to bring them together and just not be completely formal with it. Like, it was always two separate lanes, you know, but then one night, you know, I'm just trying to draw four, I'm just trying to draw four, and it's not coming together, you know, how you do sometimes, and it's just not coming together, because I was just doing like a pinup style that wasn't really me, and I've got, you know, playing music, drawing, Straight Outta Compton comes on, iTunes Shuffle, I get it in my head, I'm like, Straight Outta Asgard, you know, and delete everything, start over, Thor's with a hammer, I get the whole crew in there, and it was like an accident, but it was like the light bulb went off. I was like, oh, okay, so like the key element was just, I was thinking too hard, just make it fun, you know what I mean? Like hip hop and comics, there was a time when there were no rules, you know, and it was just a fun experimental art form. And so that's where I connected, that's where I found my style, that's where other people found my style. And ever since then, it's been just kind of like this bad signal to find other hip hop and comic fans. It's just led to collaborations. I gotta give a shout out to my Rhyme Travelers co-creator Gustavo. He saw the mashups. We got to talking about Twilight Zone and Wu-Tang Clan at a convention, and just brought it all together for Rhyme Travelers, which is kind of on, you know, all ages science fiction meets, you know, hip hop culture sort of mashup thing, and it's.
And it's fine. I'm speaking as someone who spends a lot of time for MTV and Project Field writing about young adult and kids comics, and who listens to hip hop, it's like finding anything hip hop or comic related that works for kids, let alone a crossover, is pretty unheard of. Like, it's really difficult to, especially with stuff that's coming out now, not just, you know, the easiest things to do are to go back to old Marvel comics and 90s hip hop records and give those to kids.
So for me, just trying to,
And after the Lenses records.
So for me, I'm just trying to make it fun, make it funky, have a sense of humor about it. That was always like, I felt like that was the unsung element of hip hop when I was growing up, especially when we got to the 80s and 90s, and it was like, you know, nobody wanted to be Slick Rick anymore. It was like, it got real serious, it got real dark. So I'm trying to just go back to, you know, who I am. It's just like making it fun. But I'm going to pass it to Jim, because I think when you sent me the email about the panel, I was one of those people who said, I think you meant to send this to Jim.
You were one of those people, and so was every other person.
Now I feel this tremendous pressure to say something interesting. Well, like I said, I just, you know, doing art and listening to music. When I got to college, I went to art school in Kansas City, and me and my roommates were all trying to get jobs at Marvel DC, and no one wanted us, so we just started doing our own shit, putting out our own mini comics, our own zines, and then we met up with graffiti writers in Kansas City, underground MCs, and DJs, and just started doing parties together where there was like no rules, no corporate influence. We would flyer around the city. I would go out with the graffiti writers, and I tried to do graffiti, but like I was a toy, I was horrible at it. But just to go out with them at night and like see how these guys did their craft, I kind of took like tried to take the mentality and the ballsiness of that and like apply it into my own work by doing a style that was like original, different. And so the hip hop guys that I was around really influenced me to just be like, dude, screw everything, like just do your own shit, make it awesome, remix a bunch of stuff together, and then that's the style, you know? So the style has kind of become my brand, and then when I moved to Arizona in like 97, I met Z-Trip, and he had like the #1 weekly in Arizona at the time, and he saw my art, and in like 5 seconds was like, dude, you gotta come down and do paint live on stage while I'm DJing. And I'd never really done that before. I kind of bullshitted my way into it. I was like, that's cool, I'll do that. And then I come down, I didn't really know what was going on. Like, the club was packed to the gills of people. It was like $5 to get in, all walks of life of people, like college kids, weirdos, punks, hip hop people, and him and these 2 other DJs, Emil and Radar, just completely destroying it. Like, mind-blowing music, still the best music I've ever seen in my life. And like I said, 97, so it was like 6 turntables, mad crates of records before Serato, and like me on stage like tripping over records and like painting. People are like smoking weed and getting drunk, but it was like pure culture, you know? And to me, that was mind-blowing. I would give out my books and stuff at the events, and then that led to meeting hip-hop people and eventually doing like flyers for, you know, parties, album covers. And so the whole thing just became like, oh, well, now I'm doing all aspects. It went from just doing like comic books that had characters with afros and gold chains to being like, now I'm hanging out with these people. Now I'm like meeting Slug and Merce and I'm doing their book. Now I'm doing a book all about Beastie Boys' Paul's Boutique record, because I think it's one of the greatest records ever made, regardless of genre. It's not even hip hop to me, it's beyond hip hop. And like Questlove got the book and he's using it in his class now that he teaches at NYU. So I was like, you could never plan any of this shit. It's just like one thing leads to another, and then I'm on a panel at Comic-Con with like all these dudes who I think are absolutely incredible. So it's, you know, it's one of those beautiful things.
I like being in a situation where I'm constantly in awe of every other person on stage.
It's awesome.
That's inevitably what happens to these things.
Good job on putting it together. Thank you.
Before I go on to the next question, I neglected something because right behind Jim, from my perspective, is there's someone under a baseball cap. And I somehow forgot to mention when I was talking about age-appropriate comics that I know a 6-year-old boy and a 10-year-old girl, and one of their favorite comics is a book and soundtrack by Kid Koala about a little lost robot.
How old were they?
It is, and they...
How old were they?
Huh?
How old were they? 6 years old?
6 and 10.
That's my daughter. She's 5. I would never read her that.
Really?
It's the most Carl White tragic ending you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, but The Little Prince is a tragic ending.
Fair enough.
I mean, it's, you know, I mean...
You know that book's all about Eric's love life, right?
Actually, no.
The comic is all about Jesus, but I loved it as a kid. I mean, like realistically, you put your own interpretation on things based on your own life experiences. And, you know, I did not give this to them. It was sitting around because I was listening to the record. But there was all of a sudden a 6-year-old who was obsessed with comics, and he was sitting in his beanbag chair being like, oh, this is so and then his 10-year-old older sister, who loves comics, picked it up and was like, I really like this story.
You didn't look at the yours, you see, right?
But next question on the actual proper agenda is for Adam and Matthew primarily, although Jim can jump in, and it's working with license and like working with, you did the Enemy comic. You've done other projects with musicians. Matthew, you obviously do 12 Reasons to Die with, I can't imagine how on earth you managed to work between the sometimes wildly varying opinions of those people. Just from my experience, having a little bit of backstage experience with them, like, they don't always seem to agree, and they don't always even seem to realize that they don't agree. And Jim, you did this one first comic, you did Marijuana Man, like, you've also both done album cover work. How do you go about weighing the concerns when, like, you're coming at it from a comics angle and you have a hip-hop person saying, let's do this comic? Like, do you ever need to pull back and convince them that, you know, they should maybe do something a little less corny or ridiculous? Do you feel like you need to push it more into a comics milieu?
I've been involved in, the artists I work with are open-minded and cool enough to be like, here's our basic idea, we want you to do your thing now. So like, when I met with Ziggy to do his book, he created the character, he had a kind of simple, basic concept of it, but then was like, listen, I don't want to be told what to do in the studio, I don't want to tell you what to do when you're at your art table. So let's figure out what the basic structure of this is. My friend Joe Casey wrote a script, Ziggy approved it, and then I just started drawing and like turning in pages. And Ziggy was like, this shit's awesome, or whatever. He had me change like a couple things, whatever, minor stuff. Slug and Merce like gave me their record. I listened to it like 500 times, and then I did a book based on all the songs on the record. And with the Paul's Boutique thing, I just did a bunch of research on the internet about Paul's Boutique and how those guys made the record, moved to LA, and all the samples that were used on it, and I kind of just crafted my own story around that. And then with the album covers, again, the artists, the musicians, we have to meet somewhere in the middle where it's like, what's the concept of your record? And I kind of have to let them meet me and do what I think is an awesome cover for that, you know, and hopefully not go through too many revisions, or because the more revisions you do, the more it kills the vibe of it. So, but I've been lucky with who I work with is basically what it boils down to.
That's always a good one.
Yeah, for me with the 12 Reasons, it's a lot of what Jim says that, Ghost and RZA don't want people to tell them what to do in the studio. I think he'd be a maniac to tell them what to do in the studio. So they're very respectful, creative people doing things and letting them do their things. At the same time, like, you know, I said to Ghost the first time I met him, I said, you know, it's my job to make you look good. What do you not want to do? What do you want to do? Like, you're in the book. It's your record. It's your book. Like, and he was like, make me look good. I'm like, yeah, that's the challenge there. But, you know, the actual problem for the book came early on when there was a lot of record label people involved. Not Soul Temple, which is RZA's label, they're awesome, but they're other in music. There's the cool people who handle stuff, and then there's it gets further away from those people and it gets more difficult. And when I started doing this book, I was getting 10 emails a day from people that I didn't know who they were. I'd never met them. I don't know how they were seeing scripts and things. And email would just be like, regarding 12 Reasons to Die, it would be cool if it was a car chasing. And I'd just be like, right back and be like, why would that be cool? And they were like, car chases are cool. Driving is cool. And I'd say, it's a comic. Car chases aren't that cool in a comic. It's a static medium. And I had to explain to someone, you think a car chase is cool? Do you think a photo of a car chase is cool? And they were like, oh yeah, no, don't put a car chase in. But for the most part, like, there's been things where I said, I want to do this, and RZA and Ghost and Adrian have said, like, we don't want that, we want something like this. But, they're at the top of their game because they're smart and they listen to things and they want to experience new things and they want things to be good. So if I can make a compelling point for why something's good, they get that. They want to make good art. They're not, I think if you're stuck and you say do things my way, you're going to probably be pretty myopic in the way you do it, probably pretty shitty.
Fantastic. We are suddenly almost out of time. So I'm going to ask you if you have anything on that to answer really quickly, and then in closing, transition into promoting your work.
Okay, well, as far as working with Public Enemy, just like everybody else, Chuck was really, appreciative of the art form. He's an artist himself, so he knew what he wanted, and we worked together really closely and worked out.
Thank you.
As far as what I'm working on now, All Family First is out. I work in the Public Enemy comic, and I've been doing album covers for the Public Enemy, Lucky Numbers, Frankie.
And you did illustrations for the Superman handbook.
I got the Supervillain handbook out. It's the first book, and then the Supervillain field manual, which just came out last month.
Continue on that, Matthew. 12 Reasons to Die.
12 Reasons to Die, second issue's out now. Jim did a cover for it. It was awesome.
Thank you.
It's a monthly book for 6 issues, so go to your comic store, grab copies. It's a time record. And other than that, I do a free, weird, post-apocalyptic webcomic at tripcity.net about a kid with a dog eating people. And I got a bunch of other stuff. ashcanpress.com if you care for all my writing and art of it.
Cool. Tony, Dan, you have a new Deltron.
October 1st, the new Deltron party. The poster for the single yesterday at Alex Party artwork. I brought a handful of them. They're sitting over there. Please feel free to grab one if you like. Oh, there it is. Yeah.
And you also still have the Blow Light project for the
Dave Joe making videos on our work. Also got a record coming out at some point soon. Got a girl with a collaboration with Stan, and
man stuff though.
And Del, what do you have aside from Deltron? Is that West Coast Vendors mixtape, the third one dropping? What else?
Zap stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, you heard of that?
Yeah.
He hasn't been dropping since.
I got this first two West Coast Vendors, and I'm going to make them third. So.
Oh, okay. I'm just trying to get it right, man.
I endorse that. Don't rush on the pickout, please.
Now, it's done though. It's done. I've done it like 3 times. You know, Zap is like the man, so like I don't wanna. It's family trust, you know what I'm saying? I don't want when they hear it, they be like, okay, I can't be mad that you raped my families, you know what I'm saying, Jews or whatever. that was fine. I can't do that. I got a lot of projects though. I'm working with Ladybug Mecca too as well, so you'll see.
Right now, I hope the blues album with a cardboard gramophone kit flexi record that works. Who wants this? I only have one copy. Okay,
It's awesome.
how about you two come on up? No, you can battle it out. Yeah, let's have a contest. Okay, we're gonna do a little staring contest real quick.
First with the crack and make out with the other one wins.
I'm saying it for
This could go on for a while, I have a feeling.
Oh yeah. While they're doing this,
Lady in Red. Lady in Red.
there's a
In the meantime, we are.
Are you good? Are you good? I just had Visual Funk, my new art book just came out through IDW. Very classy. Carter J. Acosta designed it all. Thank you, Carter. And I did the last Tank Girl series. It's called Everybody Loves Tank Girl. That hardcover collection out. And then are we giving that away? Sure. How do we do that? Okay. Okay. Here's a quiz. Actually, do a quiz style.
We need to wrestle.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a
There you
quiz?
go.
We are, however, out of time.
Okay, you got it. Sorry, I don't know. Right time.
Alright. Oh yeah, what's up? Yeah, I'm down in Small Press, table L1 if anybody's here tomorrow. Visual Funk and Deltron. Prime Chapters number 1 is out. Number 2 is coming this fall. Talk about this. Yeah. What's been this challenge? Oh, hey, no one's challenging himself.
There's a lot of this stuff. Prince Jacobs is in the house. He does Colicon in South Carolina, which is the country's only hip-hop and comic book convention. Prince Jacobs. I need to thank all the people who are on the panel. I need to thank all the panelists. I need to thank my partner at Depth of Field Magazine, Brian Joyce, who's not here. I need to thank all the people who supported this project. And check out depthofieldmagazine.com to see what we're doing next. All the other conventions that we're doing these panels at. Thank you so much.